What's going on, everyone? Really excited for today's conversation. Mike Malloy. Okay, this guy went from sunglass sales guru, going up and down the East Coast, to Georgetown professor, to entrepreneur, and a bunch of stuff in between. And the conversation that we're going to jump into, if you are somebody who's really thinking about a few different things. One, future of work, like what does this mean for me as a, on the front lines? What does this mean for me in leadership? This conversation is going to blow your mind. Two, you're thinking about how do I scale myself? Three, you like geeky tech conversations around like what's the latest and greatest with AI. We're going to go around all of those areas. So excited to jump in. Let's get into it. All right, Mike. Well, look, I'm excited to jump in. As somebody who there's a lot of things that you're into that I'm also into around, sales, where sales is headed, the future of work, and how we're, staffing and thinking about scaling teams. But maybe talk a little bit about like, how has sales and your background in sales really shaped kind of you and as an executive, and then also, going into academia as well too. Tell me about, because I think a lot of people, once you get in sales, you stay in sales. How has sales influenced, everything from teaching to starting a company? And what are some of the things that you feel like have been the biggest takeaways for anybody who's thinking about doing other things outside of sales?
Phenomenal question, and excited to be here and share my thoughts on sales because everybody listening is a salesperson. Every human on the planet could benefit by getting better at sales, regardless of what your job title is or what your job description or role in your
100.
family dynamic. Like I grew up the youngest kid. Like I was telling people, that we should watch the Disney movie, not the PG-13 movie as a kid. Um, and so I, growing up, I sold candy bars. I went door to door getting sponsors for a swimathon for the local swim team. Then I was a lifeguard for 6 years, got to Deloitte, got my master's in computer science, and eventually became a traveling sunglasses salesman. And I learned so much about B2B sales in Automobile University. And basically, I rented a white van. I did not say free candy on the side of it. It was full of sunglasses and displays back
That's
there.
good.
Uh,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
good. That's a good
yeah.
caveat.
And so what I did was basically drive from Ocean City, Maryland, all the way up the East Coast. So I'd hit up Ocean City and then Bethany, Dewey, Rehoboth. I take the Lewis ferry over to Cape May. I do the whole Jersey Shore and would lap back to DC, Annapolis, Maryland area. And did probably 6, 7 times each summer in my mid 20s and learned so much selling to surf shops, to eye doctors' offices. We started as a direct to consumer brand. We did a Kickstarter campaign, and while driving around going to call on different accounts, I was listening to experts in my ear on Audible, like Zig Ziglar and Grant Cardone, about
Zig.
new tactics to bring into the next place to try it and see what would happen. My favorite quotes is like, you can have anything you want in life if you get enough other people what they want. And that's my approach to business. That's my approach to sales. It's not, used car salesmen are like, hey, you want one of these like fake Rolexes? No, it's being relentlessly curious about the customer. What do they care about? What do they need? And believing so much in your product or service that it would be a disservice if they left this conversation and didn't buy it from you. And so I think that's a really powerful thing to also kind of have a magnifying glass and almost be like an investigator of like, what are the problems, the pain points that people are dealing with? What are the objectives they're trying to achieve? Why? Like two of my favorite questions are, what's your most expensive problem you're trying to solve right now? If
Ooh, I
it's
like that.
expensive, it probably means there's budget to allocate to solve it, and it's worth investing in. The other one I like is, hey man, if you decide to, hire one of our fractional executives that, they start next week, they're crushing it. We're sitting down 6 months from now having a drink celebrating. What are we celebrating? What does your life look like in 6 months? What's that transformation that has occurred that you're now really, really satisfied, that you invested in a fractional executive from Malloy Industries?
I love that. That reminds me of Zig Ziglar, man. He's got that. That's the cherry tree. Do you remember that from the book where he's like, he's like selling the house. He's like, but you look out the window there and you see the cherry tree and you imagine these memories you're creating, right? Like I mean, again, anybody who hasn't read Zig Ziglar, I think we kind of forget today the techniques in sales. I feel like we're so focused on qualification and these frameworks that I feel like a lot of people are not paying attention. Like I did the same thing, and Brian Tracy was
Oh yeah,
another
Brian Tracy
one.
for sure.
BT. How do you
Uh,
mean?
eh,
Was his classic question.
And I'm going to say, don't read them, listen. Like the audiobooks,
Yeah,
even if
yeah. I
you're
did
not
this.
driving
We had
around.
CDs though. I had CDs
Yeah,
of it.
CDs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just think hearing his enthusiasm and inflection in his voice is also something that you can then kind of play back out loud, like think about it and, okay, how could I say this in an authentic to myself way, not necessarily parroting exactly how somebody else would sell, because you need to also be aware of like, what are your strengths? Like, I am a pretty high energy, extroverted guy. Woo and individualization and personalization, communication are all strengths of mine. So like I bring them to bear, but if your strengths are different and maybe you're more introverted, like there's still great ways that you can apply this in sales.
Yeah, I love that. So we're gonna get into kind of like the work, like the future of work and some things like where we're headed in terms of, because I think we're similar in terms of how we see the future scaling as a part of this. But I gotta go, like, how did you get to be a professor? Like who,
Yeah,
like how does that happen? Like I think that's the, I know a couple of guys like Mark Roberge is a friend, and he went and did some work in between sales leadership jobs. But what was it about that? What drew you to go do that?
for sure. I think there are a few components. One was that during my sunglass days, so like I got my master's in computer science at Georgetown, had good ties there. I was on the ultimate frisbee team in grad school. I then coached the frisbee team for several years, and I love frisbee. I also love teaching 18 to 22-year-old guys about leadership, teamwork, how to overcome adversity, that sort of stuff. Um, and so I just started hanging out in the business school at Georgetown. One day a week, I would just be there, and like if students had questions about entrepreneurship, sunglasses, whatever, like made myself available. And so I started as an entrepreneur in resident, I think like 9 years ago. And they do not pay entrepreneurs in resident very much money, but it was a
You get
great.
like but it's on your LinkedIn now, and like you can, Georgetown
They give you
professor.
money for parking and like paying for lunches while you were there, which is great, and I love it. I love the community too, because when I started, I was probably like 28 and like decades younger than all the other EIRs. So like, oh, I'm friends with these 40, 50, 60-year-old guys that are like way smarter
Yeah.
and richer than me. Cool. And so been there for a few years. I literally got a cold email in September one year. Somebody in like a different part of the university to my university email and said, "Hey, Mike, students have told us that they want to learn social entrepreneurship, like entrepreneurship with a social impact baked into it. People told me that you were pretty good at it. Like, would you have any interest in teaching the class?" I thought it was a joke. I was like, "Who is this guy?" I
Right.
looked at him, I was like, "Oh, he's the head of the department over there. And he wants me teaching in the spring." And I was like, "Yeah, awesome. Definitely. This sounds great." And so I also learned that teaching a class for the first time is like 50 times harder than teaching it for the second time,
Oh
because you got to
gosh.
build the syllabus and, but once I did the work, I have that, taught that for several years, and then COVID hit. I think I taught it once or twice remotely. Um, and I also got into teaching a startup internship seminar. So this was again like my boss who worked with me for 4 or 5 years as an EIR. I was the head of the entrepreneurship program. Said, "Hey, we want to build out this program to teach students, street smarts, like how to do the practical skills that nobody really teaches them in the classroom. You want to build it, and we'll see what happens." Turns out there's pretty high demand on it. Went from a no credit class to a 3 credit to now I have a grad version of it to now I have another grad internship course that I teach. So I teach these 3 classes, and it's basically teaching everything that nobody taught me or you in college.
Sure.
About how to send emails, how to run meetings, what your personal brand is. I do have modules on sales and marketing and networking and LinkedIn and informational interviews and um, how to work remotely and navigating bureaucracy. And I love it. It's a ton of fun, and I built it out as kind of an asynchronous library of training programs. So like each week, my students go through one of the modules, they watch some videos, take a quiz, write some reflection papers, and learn from each other. Because I also believe like you got to learn by doing, and you got to learn by sharing with peers and seeing what they're doing differently, and kind of having those ideas spread in sort of a community of practice or like a mastermind.
I love that, because that's what you're going to be doing when you're in the work, when you're out there, right? Is collaborating, working together as a part of that. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, the older generation always says whatever, the younger generation is different or, lazy or whatever. What have you noticed? You've been in, kind of this world now for a little bit. Like, how have you seen things evolved in terms of, motivations and, learning styles of, Gen Z in probably particular?
Kids these days, when
You
I
know what I
walk
mean? That's
uphill in
just
the
such crazy
snow both
bullshit.
ways. Um, but actually, speaking of snow, let me ask you, Jake, do you know what a snowman's favorite flavor of cake is?
I mean, carrot?
Well, it doesn't matter what type of cake because they all smell like carrot cake. So there you go.
There you go.
I'm gonna sprinkle a couple of these dad jokes
Yeah,
in there as well.
you're the dad joke. Yeah, this guy's got, just so you guys know, like these will get sprinkled in, so you'll have some fun stuff to go
Um,
tease your kids with.
and so in terms of like kind of motivations and learning styles for the younger generation, definitely have a shorter attention span. I'll also say they're mobile first if they're on their phones all day, and so having kids read like 25-page dense academic journals on a PDF like sounds terrible to me, and I'm pretty sure
It
to
was
them.
terrible then.
Yeah, but it was like what you did. But now if like they can watch videos and instead of it being an hour and a half lecture, they're like 5 to 10 minute bite-sized clips. I find that works really well. Um, and I've also experimented with like assigning podcasts or like just audio only things to, hey, listen to this, and like you can do it at the gym or while you're walking to classes or whatever. Um, they also really like quick feedback loops, immediate gratification, like give them a checklist, check the things off. Again, make short little clips to watch instead of one long one. They get some dopamine, which is also good for
Yeah.
talking. You create that little loop. And then there's a really interesting thing called collaborative intelligence with a quiz that kind of helps people understand their mind patterns and are they kinesthetic, visual, or audio for how they process things. Like I get into flow kinesthetically, so I normally type notes on type as fast as people can talk in meetings, so I pay more attention. And then I sort things visually. I have a very color-coded Google Calendar. I like to sort my sunglasses back in the day. Um, and if it's just audio, I'm kind of out to lunch. Like I don't really pay a lot of attention. And those order can change for different people. And so I think the self-awareness of like how you best process information, as well as the people you're collaborating, working with, living with, whether that's a spouse or a college roommate, you need to change how you encode a message and send it to them so it's easier for them to decode it.
Yeah, because again, it's all about engineering the message for the audience. And I think when it comes to sales in particular, I hope a lot of people are listening, are thinking like, look, millennials and Gen Z are the largest part of the workforce today. And, if you think about sales and B2B in particular for a long time, it's always been, oh, you got to hop on a call. I want to hop on a call, or let me send you a white paper, or and I think like, I was doing a talk last week to a big group of salespeople, and I was like, look, you have to be able to, answer questions, send your demo in advance, like a 5-minute version of it. There's so many different ways that you can interact with people that, because the I guess the equation here that I make is, the buyers also are this generation, and that's how they want to consume information too, and that's how it's going to stick, right, for them. They're gonna be able to make a bigger. You're going to be able to make a bigger impact as a seller if you're meeting them, in these
And so
modalities.
one of the best pieces of advice I'm going to give for people listening, text your buyers, text your future customers as soon as you can. Like when anybody books a Calendly with me, I have them put their phone number in there, partially so I can call them if they're 5 minutes late to figure out where they are, but also so at the end of each call, and it's not a robot text like, hey, reminder to show up, and send them a little text, say, hey man, it's great meeting with you today.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm a sunglass guy, so I always use the sunglass emoji. Uh, but it's, hey, it's Mike Malloy. Great to chat today, sunglass emoji. So then you don't even have to have a conversation there, but you have opened that communication channel. So if a week, 2, 3 weeks later, they've ghosted you on email, you can text them. People respond to like 97% of text messages within 5 minutes. They respond to like 50% of emails within a week. I don't know, I'm making these numbers up, but like the rate at which you get a fast text response is incredible, and it gives you so much more access to the decision makers, especially once you get that internal champion, because then you can like have them text you when they get an objection before the next meeting with you. Hey, my boss or my co-founder is concerned about X. Like, what should I say to him? I can just give them the script, man. It's a
Dude,
kindergarten
this
game
is
of
so good.
telephone.
I'm just like jotting this down. It's such a great, it's such a good idea. A lot of things we're talking about too with a lot of our clients is send a video. Again, if you're going to
Oh yeah.
send a 3-minute, like on the recap afterwards, be like, instead of sending this long ass email, get your bullets and then just send a video. Or the other thing we talk about is, hey, you have that meeting. A lot of salespeople know this. You have that meeting with like multiple different groups, right? Instead of sending out this long thing, send a small one with like a 1-minute video. You're going to send a proposal that's a 20-page, send a 3-minute video walking through
Yeah.
it. Hey, here's the color, check this out. And like, oh, okay, cool. I can like watch that on my own time asynchronously. But I love that text idea. I'm stealing.
And,
I'm borrowing that.
yeah, put it in your pocket. I'll send you a resource afterwards. I have a sales play about how to do it and how to make it appropriate, and get them to do it,
Love it.
because it's also helpful too for anybody who's fundraising, like talking to investors, like text investors, because there's so much anxiety about getting that next meeting and like, oh, did they do the thing? If you have a phone call with them, just shoot them a text out, like, hey man, thanks for the call.
The
There's no
follow-up
next
text,
step.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I
The
think a
same
lot.
thing
Not. I
works
don't.
if you're single and you meet somebody at the bar. Send them a text that night. Hey, great to see you tonight at this location. Nothing for 2 or 3 days. Be cool. But then
Yeah.
when you
Then you
follow up,
ghost, obviously, right?
yeah, it's not a exactly. Um, I also love the follow up video idea.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of those, and somebody did one for me, and I was like, wow, that was really good. Like that's a great. I use Loom all the time, and to use that to just kind of again build some more rapport. There's some FaceTime. They can read your body language and see whatever it is you want to be
Exactly.
showing them. I think that's powerful.
Well, and we're also, I mean, like, just internally, I think about even the things you're talking about, text, short form video. We're killing so many meetings in our company with async video,
Yeah, buy back that
instead of
time.
a bunch of emails, we crush voice notes. We're
Oh, same.
massive into voice notes. It's just like so much easier than this like five. And that's also like the next step of evolution of texting, right? It's like, just send a voice note, dude. So we don't have to go, blah, 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 like just send a voice note.
What's a great rule of thumb, and I learned this from Joe Polish, it's get as close to in person as possible.
Yeah.
So like actually in person is great. This is really good. A short video, it could be a Loom, or it could just be like a video on your phone that you text to somebody is phenomenal. Do it on their birthday, like just do it to buddies. I've also a few times recorded videos of me telling dad jokes with my son, and he's like a really good wingman at 2.5. He like laughs whenever I say a punchline, which is great. And then if it's generic and like you don't say someone's name, you can send it to a bunch of people, and it's just like a way to add value, sprinkle a little bit of delight in there. And then yeah, voice notes. Like I have a handful of CEO coaching clients I work one-on-one with. We meet twice a month for an hour for like a deep session, but in between they can send me as many voice notes as they want.
Yeah.
And I
It's so
usually get
easy.
a couple a week, and I listen to them, and I can send something right back and just give them some guidance on what they need to do. But sometimes people get anxious though, and I'm curious, Jake. Do you know what you call an anxious dinosaur?
Okay, hold on. I think maybe I can get this. An anxious dinosaur. Like Tyrannosaurus vexed.
Oh, you are so close. You got it backwards though. It's a nervous wreck.
Ah. Oh. All right.
I'll
That
give you
was close
partial
though.
credit. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I'm a dad. It's like a DNA thing, maybe. I like that. So okay, now let's talk a little bit about AI, right? And I've talked to a lot of professors in particular. And let me tell you, I'm going to set this up. That I think it's such a good conversation here we're going to have for like around this topic. I was doing this session literally last week. 90 sellers in a room. I said, how many of you are using generative AI on a weekly or daily basis? 87 hands go up. Okay. How many of you had outside of this session? So we were doing a session on like the 3 tactical applications in your day to day for salespeople on like, this is how you use it, right? So we're doing a session. How many of you have ever had any training, development, anybody ever walk you through how to use it? Every single hand went down. And we are
Wow.
every 100% of the hands went down. And I think that's why like students today, because I talked to other professors that also are running like sales programs, right? They're running sales
Hmm.
programs, and they're like, oh no, like our kids all built custom GPTs. Like we had them build custom GPTs, like as a part of like the track. And I just feel like we're in this very, really interesting place. And I know, look, for me, as someone who employs a lot of people, it's my job to retrain them. Like we are retraining an entire workforce on how to solve problems because we were so foundationally used to solving problems by going to Google. And so I'm curious, like, how are you tackling that, with the students, and how do you see them showing up? Kind of moving past like, there's there was like the bulk cheating phase, and now there's like flavors of
Yeah,
cheating, I'm sure. But like,
I don't think it's
how do
cheating.
you
Yeah.
think about, leveraging, AI and Gen AI in particular for your students, and even as you think about your clients and
Yeah,
your
for
work
clients,
too?
for a fractional executive. Yeah, I mean, and we even have a few like fractional chief AI officers in our roster who are like, will come in and start with like a half day strategy session to like map out what your AI strategy can look like, figure out, where there's impact there. Fascinating that nobody's been trained on it. And I think there's an idea too of, I have gotten some training on it. Like I went to Summit in December and there was a session on, there's a great AI tool called Cintra, Sintra.ai. It's basically 12 little custom GPTs with very cute. The user interface is what's going to make it worth the money. Little guys that like will do your business development or your copywriting or your social media or your HR or your data or your customer success. And you ask them questions. Basically, they have my opinion, under the hood, it's ChatGPT with like a pre-scripted prompt to say, act as this type of a thing, this. But what's cool with this software is all 12 of them talk to each other. So if you talk to one of them about this thing, it saves that information in the brain about your company. So then when you talk to somebody else, it can reference that again. I think prompt engineering is a really important skill set to teach humans how to ask better questions of generative AI, with ChatGPT or any of the flavors of them. And starting with like act as Matthew McConaughey and do this. By the way, that's a great prompt because then it gives you the Southern twang and you just get a little Matthew McConaughey virtually. I love it. Or act as a copywriting expert who is a master of the ADA marketing framework. Another thing you can add at the end of it is, what are 5 questions you want to ask me to do a better job on this task? Please ask them one at a time. And it knows that it wants more information, but unless you ask it to ask you, it's not going to. I've also found that the questions it asks is very unlocking, if you will.
100%.
Another great thing you can do, and one of the Cintra ones is Millie, who's my like AI sales coach. And you, as a salesperson, bring your Fathom, your meeting recording, whatever, into the session, get the transcript, upload the transcript, and say, hey, act as an expert sales coach. Tell me what are 3 things that I did great in this sales call, and what are 3 things that I can improve on next time, and 3 other pieces of advice to improve my overall sales skill. I literally did this on Monday morning, 2-3 days ago, and got some really good ideas just out of a handful of sales meetings that I went through. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like that was really good. And like, I did forget to do that. All right, I need to like do this thing a little bit better to kind of move things forward. And it's recognizing too. Like, I was brushing my teeth this morning. I was listening to a YouTube video about AI and writing, and so like I encourage students to use AI in as many ways as you can. I think one pet peeve of mine as somebody grading things or receiving emails and presentations is like, don't give me a bulleted list where there's a few words bolded and then there's a colon and then there's like some more words, because like that's the ChatGPT format.
Yeah, exactly.
Just change it, like unbolded and change the colon into a dash, and like, no, I think it's an original thought, or at least you've done something to it. You didn't just copy and paste it. But I think for writing in particular, and that's all forms, whether it's like long form or emails or social content, whatever, AI is not going to replace you, but the people who learn and grow and understand how to use AI to write better will have more opportunities, and they will be able to advance further in their careers. They will also be able to perhaps buy back their time. Instead of spending 4 hours writing that thing, they spend 14 minutes, and they do a bunch of other stuff that makes them more money or acquires more wealth, or spends time on their hobbies or their family, or takes a nap, because they've been able to unlock more productivity.
I'm checking it out. I literally just pulled it up, and I'm going down these little like cute. We'll put a link here in the show notes too. But these cute little like, they're not like Teletubby looking things, but they kind of remind me of like a Teletubby for everyone back in the day. But like an astronaut Teletubby or something. This is cool, man. All right, I'm gonna go check this out. I'm nerding out on this stuff as we speak.
And one thing that I like about it too is they have this like brain AI that's like the centerpiece of Cintra. Every day there are 10 questions that they'll ask me. If I click the button, like, and I do it on my phone, I answer at least 1 question every day, because it just makes it smarter about my business. And then they'll also, whenever you want, recommend 10 things that they can go off and do, and just like ideas that they had. And like, I think of AI as like interns that are really, really hardworking, but only do what they're told to do. And so when an AI comes and says, hey, I think this would be useful, do you want me to do it? It's like a 50-50, like, do I want you to do it? And I haven't quite figured out the follow through on like what I then do with the thing they did, because that there's stuff there, and like I kind of need some humans to triage it or steer, if you will, maybe.
Yeah.
but that's this agentic AI, and like there's agents who do things and get better at it, I think is powerful. And the more it gets trained on your business, on your needs, on your, what you do for your clients. Like I had a meeting yesterday with the CRO at taxgpt.com. Like, and it's not just, oh, ChatGPT with some tax. Like, no, this is some super powered, like over a million data points, knows every single state and county's tax regulations and things for both accounting and tax firms to have it to better serve their clients, as well as individual businesses or even individuals can create an account to save time and money from having to ask your accountant, nuanced tax questions about
No
various
brainer.
things. Yeah,
No
so
brainer. And
I think
you also
there's a
brought up
future.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, you also brought up something I think is important, is like the future with these agents is they're just going to prompt you. Like prompting is V1, right? The future are these little agents, and they roll into like a bigger brain, and they're just going to prompt you. It's going to be like great. And that's like all the custom GPTs that we've created for sellers, like discovery call prep. It's like, I'm ready to get started. It's like, it already knows your buyer persona, your whatever, your whatever. It's like, give me a link, give me the PDF to their LinkedIn profile, and you're done. You don't have to say, hey, I'm meeting with this company. So there's all these like little use cases that, like the Cintra has already taken the time to program. Hey, you are amazing at sales advice. Here is good sales. Like they've taken the time to do that. And, I just created my first voice agent now that can call you. It's around discovery call prep. So I'll put a link to the number you can call and talk to me. So I used 11 Labs. Have you messed with 11 Labs at all? Like the voice?
I haven't. Tell me more about it, and
Yeah,
I
so
also
11
want to tell you
Labs is
about
by
40.
far the
Yeah.
best in like voice cloning, right? As a part of this. So 11 Labs, you upload, I mean, you've done a bunch of podcasts, upload, I think they recommend about 2 hours for the professional, and it will clone your voice amazingly, right? Like a really, really good. And then you can take the voice and then create both chat agents, and, when you integrate a Twilio phone number, you can integrate a call. So I created a Jake Dunlap agent call that you can call. And again, like my goal now is, Mike, I'm going to be creating like, I'm going to basically be brain dumping every topic that we consult on around revenue. I can create like hundreds of little mini agents, and literally their job is like, hey, someone has a problem. It's like, yeah, just go talk to this one. And it's like, and is it
Yeah.
going to be as good as me? No, but this is
But is it
where
going to scale more than you could?
Oh my God, yes. And again, I like again, and I was just testing it this morning, and look, I've given it our templates, our PDFs, and I'm like, okay, what are the order of operations of questions? Nails it. It's like role responsibility, business priorities. This, like, is it as and if you, and it's like, hey, do you want me to role play with you? I didn't tell it to do that. It's like, I'll role play the discovery. I'm like, yes, like this is. So I'm nerding out on all this stuff, and I think if you're somebody in the revenue org, I mean, there's a lot of different like of these types of applications, and maybe some are more interesting, but this Cintra one to me is like, I really am into this. I've got another like solo entrepreneur buddy. It's kind of like kind of try to do this. He just created a bunch of custom GPTs that are like his board. He's like, you are a CFO. Here's my company. This is what we do. Blah, blah, blah. You are my CMO. This is my company. It sounds like a hack version of this this Cintra. And so this is a good transition as we're talking about like all this different weird shit we're working on and you're teaching students on. You also, run a company, right? You have a job, and you started, Malloy Industries, and, why it's obviously applicable to us. We do a ton of both, call it fractional work and support, really diving into revenue teams and helping both, whether it's strategy or more tactical, technical or enablement support. Let's talk about how all of this is shaping the future of company building, right? If we think about the next evolution, because we're talking a lot about how, these new technologies, et cetera, but we haven't talked yet about what is it going to look like to scale a business, right? You think about these little agents now, you think about like, again, like having your own board, these AI that are like pretty good, like what are some of the trends for you? And, you can talk a little bit about, like why you started the company and kind of what you saw there too. But when you think about how we're going to build companies, it used to be you just hired people. I have a job. I hire a person. And especially in sales, like, how do we scale revenue? Well, here's my waterfall forecast. I hire this many reps. There's this many quota. There's this churn. And that's how I hit my number. And now, more and more boards and private equity, they're like, oh, no. You don't get to hire more people. You got to get 20% more productive. And so, how are you thinking about that? And when your clients are coming to you, What are some of the trends you're seeing in terms of how they're thinking about growing and scaling?
Great question. You touched on a lot of interesting things there.
There's
Future
like
of
six
work.
questions in there,
Yeah.
basically. But
Uh, I mean, the first things first, like if you really want to build and scale a company in 2025, you need to buy a fax machine. I think getting a fax machine is really no, I'm kidding with you, man. Like it has changed. It is not what it was 30, 40 years ago. And you don't need full-time humans either. Like you can get 100% of the outcomes for a fraction of the cost when you bring on a fractional executive. Right. So you're able to get the painting hanging up on the wall in the living room with a different hammer and nail. If you think about that analogy of like, oh, the human is the hammer who's going to hit the nail, it's going to hang the thing. Like, what do companies care about? They care about the painting on the wall. They care about what is the outcome, the transformation, the benefits. The feature is not full-time butts and seats. And any CEO or entrepreneur who's bragging about their headcount, stop. Okay. I don't care that you have, you went from 20 to 75 employees. Like, that sounds like you probably could have been more efficient there. And I really, really hope you went from 20 to 30 employees, not just in whole numbers, because you can get a quarter of a salesperson, you can get a half of a CMO, you can get a third of a CFO. You only need fractions that you put together, and as they hit that capacity, then okay, get a little bit more of the fraction. But it's a decimal place addition. It's not, oh, I need another 3 SDRs. Like, no, you can get an AI SDR like Alice from 11x that can send out 3,500 emails in a month to different cold emails to scale that. And she researches them, she builds the list, she personalizes it, she warms up the email domains, she does everything. And, that's like, what, like 5 to 9K a month, that can do what 1 to maybe 8, 10 SDRs can do without having to deal with any of the people management. Because that's the other thing. Like, I love people. They're messy sometimes, and the relationships and the drama and the full time and like the stress of all this. Like when you're bringing in fractional executives, they're not bringing their drama with them. They're showing up as experts to work and get the job done, to collaborate with people as needed. And like some of them are, coaches and mentors and will help people. Sometimes you just need an A player to come and do A plus work for 10 or 20 hours a week, then just buy that piece of it. You don't have to pay the full salary, have the overhead and benefits. And you also understand, like, why do you want it? Like, there's the what that needs to be done, but what's the why? Like, if we focus on the whys, like, is it because you want to hit a certain revenue goal? Well, why? Oh, it's because you want to go raise your Series A or Series B, and you need to hit that. Okay, but like, why do you want to raise that? Oh, because you want to sell the business in like 3 years. Okay, well, like, what multiple are you looking to make? And suddenly you're talking about a 6x multiple on 20 million revenue. Like, yeah, spending a couple $100,000 to get a couple fractional executives is a really good deal. It's like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, let's do that. That is the thing for this next stage of growth. And I think I was a math major too. It's a fascinating math series of equations of like, what am I optimizing for? And I don't have to use whole numbers. So suddenly it's a much more fluid and dynamic interval in which you can build and scale your team with these fractional executives that, they're not 20-something college kids. They're grown-ups who know how to do things very, very well, and also know that they don't want to sit in a cube and make TPS reports for the next 40 hours, 40 years of their lives. They want to work with 3 to 5 clients and do really fascinating and motivating work and create impact. And then go be with their family or do what matters most, because there's also this like work-life balance, especially since COVID, of 24/7 always working. Like, nope, I'm a pretty big fan of boundaries. And like, you have the time when you work, and then you have the time when you're offline, and you'll talk to people when you're back online.
The interesting, I was listening to a book by this guy, Gino Wickman. It's How to Be a Better Boss. I think that was the name of it. And they did a survey, or somebody did a survey. And the work-life balance thing is actually it's interesting. It's like the high-performing people who said they had like really great work-life balance actually worked more than other people, but because they enjoyed what they were doing.
They felt like it,
And it's such a different, when you think about the combination, that's a whole other episode we could talk about work-life balance.
I'll just rip on that quickly though, of this.
Please,
like,
man.
When you do it right, an onlooker can't really tell the difference between work and play, labor and love. Like, it blends together because you're enjoying everything you're doing, and you have proactively created a lifestyle such that you're in that zone of genius, what fascinates and motivates you, not in the hard, annoying, lame, frustrating bucket.
Yeah, that you're forced into with like a job. And that, how did you, what made you start, like, what was it that you're like, you realized this was part of the solution? Like, what was the
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
for you as someone, again,
Yep,
who had been and worked, been an entrepreneur, then in academia? Like, what was it where you were like, this is just crazy. Like, you have to, like, this is the answer.
for sure. And so I mentioned earlier kind of the sunglass journey from like 25 to 30. I went bankrupt at 30. I spent the next 5 years running an incubator for early stage entrepreneurs in DC. Loved it. Um, your listeners probably, didn't notice that there was a global pandemic a few years ago and everybody like worked from home. But while that happened, I left DC and moved to the beach in Delaware with my wife. And once we got here, we said, why would we ever go back to tall buildings and commute and mandatory pants? Like, these are not things that we need. And so I love the incubator, I love the people. But when they said come back to the office after COVID, that was my like, hey
Yeah.
guys, I'm out. And led me to start Malloy Industries. Initially, it was like Mike Malloy, single shingle. I'll help you with sales, marketing, fundraising, consulting, and had a very lucrative summer of 21. And then, well, life happened. And in September that year, my mom passed away. And that same week, my wife told me she was pregnant with our first son. And so a lot of the field, a lot of time off grieving
Yeah.
and being with my family. And I went back to work in October and realized, I made $0 in September. And like, that was all right. Stuff happens. But if my son's going to be born in like 7 months, how do I take paternity leave and still make money? And that led me down this customer discovery path about fractional executives. And at this point, I've done over 500 customer discovery interviews with clients, investors, fractionals, everybody. I'm all in. This is the future of work, especially once you get a decade or so of career experience, you have some career capital, some rare and valuable skills. Like, you don't have to be beholden to one income stream. In fact, you want to have multiple income streams and have them flow into a revenue river that
That is
then
your bank account.
that is, and the average millionaire has 7 income streams. So if you're listening to this and only one thing or one company or one whatever is paying you this month, think about how do you add a second one next month. And it doesn't have to be a ton of money. Like, what's a little side thing you can do on Gumroad or Etsy or something, like just
Yeah.
ways to create diversity of income streams.
Yeah, he did. I want everyone to listen though. He did say you need to be like get experience at it, or like
Yeah.
be relatively good at it and teach yourself or learn by doing, one or the other, which I think is a key part of that. And in companies, what I see, Mike, is this. I think that there's an ego component on the full-time hire front. It's like, it feels good, like to your point, to say, I have 75 employees versus 35, even though we're doing the same revenue, right? I raise money. I'm like, oh, look at,
Yeah. But
we've grown
what
and
what if
hired
people
people.
what if people said instead of my head count, it was my revenue per employee or profit per employee?
Yeah.
That's a number that I'm interested in, because like you can have more employees, but like you could have a $10 million business, but if you've got $20 million in expenses because of all your employees, I want that. I'd
Yeah.
rather have $2 million of expenses in a $10 million business.
Yeah, well, I think I see it a lot in sales and sales leadership, and I think what happened, and I'll blame venture capital for this, or a version of it, which
Yeah.
is they would judge the worth of a sales leader by how many people they've managed. You go, hey, look at Linda. Linda's worked at a company that was 100 million. Roger also worked at a company that got to 100 million, but he managed 80 reps, and the former only managed 30. And people go, oh, but Roger, he knows how to scale. And I feel like there's just a foundational flaw, especially around sales and scaling sales, where there is a massive amount of weight, because in many organizations of B2B, the sales organization is one of the largest, if not the largest pod of
Yeah.
humans, maybe development too. And I think that there's just an issue right now in sales and B2B sales in particular, where we are not ready to break from the departure. Now, these guys are also are disincentivized to not want to hire people because of what I just mentioned. If I hire more
Hmm.
people, my team is this, and there's also this fallacy around one throat to choke. Right? I hear, that's like, well, we got to have our guy for this or our woman for this. Like, this is great fractional for a while. How do you, how are the leaders that you talk to, how are they evolving thinking away from that? How are they thinking about, yeah, cool, this person can manage people. What are the skills maybe that they're looking for that are different than the big org manager skills versus more effective scaling skills?
You touched on a lot of great points there. I think one of them is that I want to highlight is great leaders don't make great followers. They make more great leaders. And so if you are building a sales organization, I don't want you managing 80 people. Maybe you shuffle up and you shuffle people up with you, and then they have some people that report to them. And so there's at least
Oh,
a,
of course, yeah.
uh, but it's also thinking too about like, did you have somebody start as an SDR, then they became an account executive and then a senior account executive, and then they actually went to another company and now they're, the VP of sales or the CRO over there. Like, I consider that a win in terms of like,
Yeah,
are they a
definitely.
good sales leader? I don't think the number of people on the sales team has to be a core metric for like, are they growing and building a great organization? Like, let's do it more efficiently. How can we be scrappy? And like, how can you also more effectively train the existing and future sales team members? How effectively do you recruit and attract talent with sourcing, interviewing, vetting, onboarding new reps? And then it's also coaching. Like, how are you able to, in a one-to-one and one-to-many coaching session, able to increase the conversion rates at stages of the funnel? Because instead of adding new humans who will also have like a 20% demo to close ratio, if you can get your existing team to go from a 20 to a 27% close ratio, and if you can get an earlier step in the funnel to go from a 1% cold email conversion to a meeting to like a 1.7, but you have a big enough scale, like those little, small hinges swing big doors. And I'm always interested in sales leaders who have that attention to detail at the micro level and understand the macro consequences as they're able to make some of those changes. Um, yeah, I think that to me is a big part of what I look for sales leaders, and is also something that fractional sales executives who have decades of experience, who've been on high performing and in some cases not high performing sales organizations, know what to look for, know the questions to ask. And like, if you put the business up on the mechanics rack and you look at the whole sales funnel, they know where to look and where to poke and see, like, are there holes or is there friction there? Where are people falling out of it? Another big thing for us is I like winning by design's bow tie model with the revenue architecture, where like you've got the whole sales funnel on the left side, but the right side, onboarding, retention, and expansion. What are you and your team doing to expand existing business? Because it is 9 times easier to get somebody who's already paid you money once to pay you a second time than to find a new stranger on the internet to buy something for the first time.
Yeah, I think that those are all, kind of key points. And I think hopefully a lot of people listening, and even just to the broader piece here around, look, the future of how we scale, there are a lot of really talented people that want something different. It does not mean that there's a quality issue. It doesn't mean that there's a commitment or buy-in issue. And I think those are the big things when I think about, how we scale orgs and, talking to companies about, okay, look, you could hire 2 people here who you're expecting to be jacks of all trades. Like, there's so much technology and changes that it is almost impossible. If you are a full-time employee at a company, it is nearly impossible to stay up to speed on all of these different things that are happening, as opposed to like you can get 3 fractional people that are experts at this, and this versus someone who's like okay at a few things. And I do feel like, we're seeing these shifts in the revenue organization where people, especially around operations and enablement, where they're like, yeah, maybe we don't want to try to hire these 3 people who one was a sale. We need someone who kind of really gets this stuff. And so we could have 6 people that are doing all these things and they're really good at it. And to your point, they're in their zone of excellence and they're loving it. They're not being
Yeah.
bogged down with a third of the work, being like, I hate this part of my job,
And I
as a part of it.
procrastinate on it, and I have
And
to
they're not
context
good.
switch because I see emails about it, but I don't have time to work on it because it's not that time for me right now. And it's completely ineffective. Yeah, I totally agree that that's a big struggle.
Yeah. And
And when
again, I
people
think it's
say,
like, yeah,
I just going to cover one other thing, like if a company's like, oh, like I need somebody full time, you need to be dedicated and committed to my business only. Well, like, how dedicated are your full time employees? Do
that's
they
right.
really care as
That's
much as
right.
you do,
That's right.
or are they just like checking their fantasy football team and like ready to go to happy hour?
Yeah, I mean, like, and again, it's not to say that there's tons of value in having full time. We just had our 2-day kind of like leadership quarterly session these last 2 days, and this is part of our topics. We have a mix of 1099 and full time, and we're like looking at our bench, and it's like, do we actually need to hire anybody full time this quarter? Like, we got this like growing bench of 1099s, and they've been working with us for, this person's been here for 4 years, 1 year. Like, let's just keep scaling this way, and I think it's just, we've proven it a million times over, this idea of full time. So for anybody listening, again, as you're thinking about growing or scaling, and even if you're an individual contributor, like, are you growing and scaling yourself in these different parts of the job that you hate by learning better technology, getting your own VA? There's a bunch of different ways you can scale yourself, your own fractional helpers. Check out this Cintra app. I'm excited for that. Mike, as we wrap up, like, some final thoughts, man. Final thoughts around, the kind of future of work. If somebody's, getting into the workforce, or not even if somebody's in the workforce today, their first, let's say at 10 years, what are some big things that you're thinking about for them, and some final thoughts you would leave them with around, whether they're picking their career, not necessarily their career path, but just, they're trying to scale themselves, or they're trying to, do more with less, like a lot of people are being asked to do.
The last safe investment is in yourself. And so for the listeners, what should you be doing? You should be investing more in yourself. And if you have to spend 40 hours a week at your job, spend 20 hours a week improving yourself, reading books, taking online courses, joining mastermind groups, going down YouTube, Wikipedia rabbit holes. Like, there are 168 usable hours in every week, right? Cut out some of the Netflix time, and you'd be amazed at the capacity you have to acquire new skills, to, I think I mentioned Zig Ziglar, Grant Cardone. Like, those guys are mentors and teachers of mine. I've never met them, but I've learned
Right.
so much from that time learning from them. I'll also encourage you to realize that, like, your career is not a 40-year climbing the corporate ladder like our parents or grandparents. I'm also playing the 100-year game. Like, my goal is to make it to 115 years old. I'm 38, so like, I'm like almost a third of the way there. I got a lot to go from here. And so with that in mind, every 3 to 5 years, radically reevaluate your whole life. Like, put the dice back in the Yahtzee cup, and re-roll the city you live in, the company you work for, the role, the industry, everything except the spouse. You pick a spouse, ideally that one's long-term. We're gonna play that game.
That'll get costly after a while.
Yeah, but and if you think about it, just over 25 years, and you break it up into quarters, like you just had your quarterly planning, there are 100 quarters in 25 years. You can bomb an entire 3-month period of your life, and that was 1% of that 20. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's not win or lose, it's win or learn. And so when you're not winning, you're learning, and learning is winning. So it's win or win, and we're growing. And when you're younger, you should work to learn, so that you're older, you work to earn. And there's some of my soapbox philosophy on,
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
how
I
you think
love
about your
that.
career. And even if you, Jake, start your career as a pizza delivery man, you got to ask the question, well, why did the hipster burn his mouth on the pizza? It's because he tried to eat it before it was cool.
Boom. Look at that. He ties it into the dad joke to just like put the period on the point. I love it, man. And yeah, I think, Gary Vee has like a saying too. It's like, man, life is long. Like, dude, you got so much stuff. Like, it's short, and we got to but also, it's like, you don't have to have it all figured out. The Yahtzee, it's funny. I kind of did that, I guess, in my life by default. The Yahtzee cup, I've
Me
kind
too.
of moved all over. Now that I have 2 kids, it's like, okay, we'll probably be here for a little longer, and then whatever the next chapter
Yeah.
is, as a part of it. Well, look, man, this is an awesome conversation. I was like, I'm taking notes. I'm like, oh man, that's going to be a good clip. And so I hope all of you had a really amazing, time listening to this, had a lot of takeaways. Mike will include a lot of your contact information if you want to get in touch with him around the work he's doing. Follow some of his content as well. We'll make sure to include all of that as well. So really appreciate you joining me, man.
Thanks, Jake. Have a great one.